In a world where everything appears chaotic, are we living in a simulation?
Welcome to Deep Speak, where we ask the questions to the answers of the universe. Follow our crazy trains of thought as we start on one topic and end up
in a whole other dimension.
That was it, right?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Nailed it. So today we ask the question, are we living in a simulation?
According to Elon Musk, he says that we're most likely in a simulation.
Mm-hmm.
We never could know the original real world. What is the real world anyways? Are there any objective truths? Is there anything that we can put our finger on that expands beyond the boundaries of our own perceptions?
Yeah, this conversation never gets old. I'm surprised we haven't covered it yet, because this is one of my favorite topics, because I feel like every day I'm wondering what is real and what world am I in? And I feel like a lot of people collectively have been asking that, at least in the last 2 years.
Oh, yeah. With everything crazy happening, or at least being revealed, and I don't know which is which, if the world has gotten crazier, if we're just waking up to understanding that it always has been this way.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talk about synchronicities, and that's one of the things where it feels like the glitches in the matrix or the anomalies that happen that cause us to say, wait a minute, something beyond what I think is reality is how did I just think of something or talk about something and then it appeared in our reality. And let's actually talk about some of the synchronicities, because I know you love talking about those.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us.
I get so excited. One I want to bring up right away, nod to my sister. She had to put down her dog. She's had for a very long time this last week. And so this isn't mine, obviously. But she had bought a batch of random stickers like a month ago or something like that, not knowing what was in there or anything. And I've done that before too. I bought random stickers for whatever reason and, see what you get. And there were a few of like a Chihuahua, and one of them, her dog was a Chihuahua, and one that was a Chihuahua like in the stars, almost, like it was, sort of like a dog that had passed away or something like that. And just, that's a fairly minor one, but what are the odds that there would be when do you see stickers of Chihuahuas? Like, and she didn't order those intentionally for dog stickers. She didn't even know there were animal stickers in there.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like, what are the odds of that? And it showed up after this event, and she had ordered them not knowing that she would have to put her dog down a month later, right? Mm. So that's one. That's weird. I have so many, I personally am just living in this, whatever this reality is, full of synchronicities. But one of my favorite is the bonsai tree. This is like 5 years ago now or something. But sitting at home thinking like, I like plants. I always kill them. Like, I've never had a bonsai tree, though. That'd be kind of cool to have a mini tree or something. Now, this is what intrigues me the most, is that it seems as though our marketing and algorithms have mimicked what the universe or whatever the simulation seems to do.
Right, which seems like there are algorithms and programs within our simulation.
Yes. So, for example, I remember immediately after thinking this, all of a sudden I saw on my phone somewhere an ad for a bonsai tree. I'm like, whoa, that's freaky. But how would an app have known what I was thinking?
Right.
Now, a lot of people are experiencing this, so I wanted to be specific. I don't know if they can read your mind necessarily, but one thing they can do is look at your past browser history and sort of formulate things that you may be interested in based on other people's
and
algorithms.
not only your browser history, but they take into account all where you've been
Yep.
from Google Maps tracking you.
Mm-hmm.
They take into account any of your social media things that
Yep.
any advertisements that you even paused on when you're scrolling through like Facebook or something or Instagram. It'll automatically assume that means that you have an interest for that.
Yeah.
Any keywords that you use in your posts,
Mm-hmm.
any keywords you use in any of your comments.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as soon as I started talking about gardening and seeds, all of a sudden tons of advertisements for that popped up on Facebook. Now I have my GPS always turned off. Doesn't mean they can't locate you because we've seen that all of a sudden when we moved, YouTube was advertising things to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how does anyone know? I haven't even changed my address yet. Like, I don't have anything registered here, nothing. How does it know? But it's, you know, it's always triangulating where you are according to cell towers.
So that's exactly what I wanted to be clear on, because I think a lot of people are just waking up to that and they think that's what a synchronicity is, and that's not a synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, that's another program within the program, sort of,
Correct.
or at least humans mimicking how probability works, right?
Right, yeah.
Now, here's the kicker with my bonsai tree story. I left the house, and just down the street, there was literally a bonsai stand that was never there before. It was temporary. Some guy just put up a stand selling bonsai trees. Okay. What are the odds of that? Mm-hmm. That is very strange to me. Like, now, there's no way that the same people that create these ads and these algorithms to try to sell you products suddenly were like, hey, Bob, we need you to go set up a bonsai tree stand right now because Josh just looked for them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's something universal.
Or that your reticular activating system
is looking.
Never saw it before, and now it's seeing it. It would have been there. You just noticed it because it was coincidence.
Can you explain that to people that might not know what that is?
So your reticular activating system is basically the part of your brain that when you think about something or bring it to your conscious awareness, then your mind will automatically look for evidence to, and that's what confirmation bias really is. People get that. They get that wrong. They actually conflate confirmation bias with cognitive dissonance. Like, people are trying to use these technical terms, which is really cool. I'm glad people are aware of it, but they keep conflating the two. So it's confirmation bias, meaning your brain is looking for evidence to prove that you're right. So if you've ever bought a car and you got a brand new blue Camaro, right? And then all of a sudden you see that same Camaro everywhere, and you're like, how are there so many Camaros all of a sudden, blue Camaros, just like mine? Was because you've brought it to the forefront of your attention. And there's a great book called Can I Have Your Attention that I read, that I learned all about this way back in like 2007 or something. And it's really interesting how your brain will look for that. It fills in gaps. It creates stories. It's, and that's all primitive mind behavior that's important for survival.
Yes.
But anyways.
Identifying threats and stuff like that.
Correct. Creating, what's it when you create faces out of everything?
I know, pareidolia. Pareidolia, I can't say it, but basically seeing faces and patterns to identify threats in the jungle is a very primitive thing in our brain. So, would you say that bonsai tree was part of the reticulate?
Well, see, you could be like, oh, well, that's just a coincidence that this guy is, all was set up to do this well before you ever thought about it. Or maybe you were reading his mind and somehow, like, because you go past there, your energy was stuck in there, and maybe that stuck in the like highway of energy. And so he passes through there. He's thinking about going there and doing that, and then it automatically connects to maybe you're thinking about going to work, and you tap into that same energy, that same radio wave there. And so maybe there was like a collective consciousness or a collective mind read. That could be something.
So you're saying that that's like a universal synchronicity, basically not just a random event in time and space, but actually that there's a connection between thought.
It could have been. I mean, I'm just thinking.
Mixed with probability.
Correct.
Right.
So
you might not
have thought about it unless he had already. What came first,
Right.
Did you think about it and then he decided he wanted to be there because he felt drawn to that area? Or did he already know he was going to be there, was preparing for it, and that thought leaked into your brain or got into your vibration area?
I love this stuff. This is sort of what does this tie into the whole like chicken egg and psychic,
Right.
what a psychic can do to like power of suggestion
Yeah.
too kind of
I
thing?
think that's a very big thing. I mean, we kind of touched on that in telepathy.
Yes. But
In our
is there
telepathy podcast.
doesn't this sort of throw out causality? Doesn't that throw causality out the window basically? Because or at least linear causality?
Yes. This is what's interesting is like that's what makes you kind of believe in retrocausality.
Yes.
You know, what came first, right? The chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
The egg or the chicken, or did they both?
Right.
They both create each other.
Right.
Right? Did the egg create the chicken, so the chicken create the egg? That's a loop, right? That's
Yes.
a causality
Right.
loop, right?
Yeah, so if that guy, had his own reasoning to put that stand up at that exact spot at that exact moment, that could have non-locally affected my thought, but we don't know which one would have came first
Right.
at all.
Or if they fed
Or
off of
did-
each other.
right.
Yeah, causality.
Or were there more people involved other than just me and this shop guy?
I mean,
Like,
it could
what,
be his wife was like, you need to get out there. You need
Yeah.
to sell these.
Here's a good intersection right here.
You never know.
I don't know. Yeah, it's so weird.
Right.
What other synchronicities do you have that are like undeniable?
Well,
There's so many.
So I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like since we have become more and more aware, or awake, I guess. I don't know. I hate saying that because I hate to be kind of, I hate to be listing myself as some like special being
Sure.
who is awakened.
Right.
I'm above everybody else. I hate when people
know.
do that.
Yeah.
Because we're all on our own journey in our own time, divine timing and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I feel like for myself and my own reality, the more aware I've become, the more I feel like synchronicities have become like faster and more in your face.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't deny it. It's not just like, oh, I looked at the clock and it's 11:11.
11 is where
and then I
people
looked at it
start.
again and it was 1:11. Like, and I understand that there could be something to that. Like people say that there's angel numbers or that it means that you're supposed to stop and pay attention to something. It could be a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could just be that you look at the phone a billion times a day and you only notice it when
When it
numbers
is
are
aligned,
lined up.
right. Mm-hmm.
How many times you went to go look at the time and then you're like, what did I just look at? I looked at the time and now I can't remember what it was. So you
Right.
probably do it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You probably look at your phone a lot more than you
consciously realize. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely do that.
So there's some, though, that are beyond the numbers, synchronicities or numbers lining up, or even things like, oh, I just thought about that, and then I just read it on my Facebook, which there are some crazy ones on there, too,
Right.
are things that happened, and I'm just going to say recently, that was last year. Okay, King of the Hill.
Mm-hmm. I was
The
hoping
show,
you'd bring that
King
up.
of the Hill. These are the ones that are just like, that can't happen. Like this doesn't, like there's no actual person in real time doing something where I aligned with, right? King of the Hill was made way back in
I think it came out in
2000
97.
97, okay?
Yeah.
So many decades ago already. And me and Josh were outside hanging with our neighbors, and we were listening to 90s music.
I think so.
Or early 2000s.
Yeah.
And we were all kind of jamming and having fun. And then we came inside and there were some synchronicities that we had while we were out there. And I'm like, oh my God.
Well, one of them, and I'm sorry, but I
Yeah.
don't know if this was the same night, but you were like, I'll know we're in a simulation
Yes.
if we meet someone that's like Boomhauer, it talks like Boomhauer or
right,
something like
that's
that.
right.
And then
One
one
of
of
our
our neighbors walked out and started talking like kind of like, he didn't have a southern accent, but he was he was
kind of
just kind of mumbling and
I mean, he might have been drunk, but it still was just kind of funny that I was like, oh my God, that is so similar. And I think that was the same night.
Okay.
Because then we're like, oh my God, we literally met a Boomhauer.
Right.
And I said, this has got to be a simulation if we
Right.
meet somebody like Boomhauer.
So what was the next thing that you said?
So then the next thing I said is we were like climbing into bed and we decided to put on King of the Hill, random, episode. And I was like, oh, you know what? We were just listening to, I was trying to think of the most obscure thing that I didn't think would be in the show. And I said, if this show says, get your freak on, okay, then I will absolutely believe that we're in a simulation. Okay, King of the Hill. Like, why would they ever say that?
Right.
I shit you not then, right? We're watching it for maybe like 10 minutes. I don't know. Few minutes. And all of a sudden Peggy goes, what are you trying to get your freak on? To Hank. And me and Josh were like, no, oh my God. Way. What just happened? So this show that was created many, 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 many years ago, where we randomly started to watch it. And I set it up beforehand saying that because we were listening to a song that was Missy Elliott, get your freak on.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why I was like, I just pulled that randomly out. So it's like
you were testing.
I was testing it. I was like, there's no way that this show would say get your freak on. And she literally said it.
Yeah.
And it was just so strange.
Yeah.
And then I still am freaked out by that.
I know. And then the next episode was called Get Your Freak Off, because it was like a follow-up, and we were like, come on, are you kidding me? So what are the odds that we were watching that show at that time, in that season, that was X amount of years old? Like, that's an astronomical probability.
And I set it up that way.
Right.
Yeah. It wasn't like I knew the episode was coming, or I had seen it previously and it was in my subconscious or for any reason. It wasn't that there's no, like, it's not like she said it because I said to say it, because she's not a real person.
Right.
So it's just so, how do you justify that?
Right.
And we had that several times within the last couple of years. Like, I had a wig. The red wig, remember? And I put the red wig on. I'm like, oh, what should I name the red wig? Because I named all my wigs after cancer. And I was like, I'm going to name it Candy. And then
you were describing Candy's character, like she's sassy and this and that.
Right. And then all of a sudden we were watching Futurama was on in the background. And then all of a sudden he says, and this is Candy, the redheaded blah, 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 blah. And I was like,
the same
a random character.
Yep.
I was like, what?
Yeah. Within minutes.
Within seconds, I think.
Almost instantaneously.
It was so weird. So weird. That kept happening.
I mean, these are so many examples. Like, I've been experiencing these for literally decades now too, but it's weird because they go through, I guess when I personally started first experiencing them, I was so young. I kind of thought I was like losing my mind or something, Yeah. But this is interesting because this is where psychics come into play too. Like, I met, a psychic. I brought this up in here before, I think, but I remember telling her like, hey, I keep seeing these things. I didn't have a term for it, but I'm like, I keep seeing where music lines up with what's around me and I can't figure it out and it's freaking me out, and like really specific events, right? And she said, well, those are synchronicities, and that's sort of
you didn't know.
I didn't know what
it
was. Yeah, she called them synchronicities, and she, described them as like the universe's way of basically telling you, talking to you basically. I don't think she got really in depth or whatever. I'm like, what? Well, I felt a tremendous sense of relief that I wasn't crazy, So ever since then, I was always curious how many people actually experience this stuff and either dismiss it or they just don't know who to talk to about it. But but they're paying attention to it.
Yeah, a lot of people say it's signs. Like that's where you get into them. Yeah. Like a lot of psychics and stuff, and the spiritual community will then be like, well, that's a sign.
Right.
It's a sign to listen to stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up creating kind of like some black pill moments for us, because we both went through that period.
Yes.
We were like, oh my God, what does 1111 mean? Does it mean my true love is going to come? My twin flame is going to be here? Like we would start to make up these stories again, filling in these gaps and like, what does it mean? And searching for this purpose behind it.
Yeah.
And because of that, then we realized it didn't mean freaking anything. We got disappointed and we're like, well, screw this whole thing.
Yes.
You went through that same period, right?
I went through the rebellious phase. Like, I'm just going to not believe in any sign or synchronicity that I see. And now I'm actually going to just ignore it and see if it still happens. If I'm purposely rejecting it and not paying attention to it. Well, through those trials, personally, they still happened. It didn't matter. It's just that they didn't.
When that happened, then I went, fuck you.
Right, me too. Yeah, it was like, oh, yeah, you're trying to tell me something?
Yeah.
It felt like this meaningless...
Or like this very, like, why are you so fucking vague? Why don't you just say it?
Exactly.
Like, why, if I have a spirit guide or God's talking to me or angels are talking to me, I don't know, whoever's talking to me, ghosts, I don't know who it could be.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something coming from somewhere else other than our physical reality, then why the hell doesn't it just say it, lay it out for me?
Yeah.
So, I got annoyed with it and disappointed in it, too. And we went through a period of saying, well, it doesn't mean anything.
Right. The things that bothered me were when they would get really specific, and I can't think of any specific details right this second, but I know, like, all these years later, there's been certain moments where a TV show, maybe, it's always TV, and I personally think there's a reason for that. I don't want to get too off topic. I think it's how the universe is electrical in nature. I think it uses electronics because there's not resistance in it. Mm-hmm. But that's a separate subject. Yes, because we are in a simulation full of electrical impulses. Exactly. Anyway.
But in a binary code way, not in the gender way.
Yeah, right. Anyway, taking that term back. But, you know, where TV shows would play out this entire episode or at least an entire scene that seemed to mimic something in my life, like very specifically, whatever it was at the time. Yeah. And there's been times where it would be really emotional, like if somebody died in the family or something, and I don't know, you know, anything you can think of that would be emotionally triggering. I've seen those play out, and then it's kind of like, well, what was the point of that? Is it just a reflection back on what I'm experiencing?
Or again, we like to explore things on all these different avenues. You know, everyone thinks that they have the idea of what is truth and what's fact. Right. Being open-minded skeptic, we want to kind of break down things and be skeptical about them. And so we look for meaning. We're always looking for meaning. And we're looking for similarities, and we're looking for things to feel and to identify with. Right. So you could be looking for the meaning and relating it to your own life. Right. Possibly.
At times, yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that could be like, we've had that happen too.
That's more pattern recognition stuff.
Right.
You know?
And so those things are a little more vague and a little more like, are they just coincidence? And then also that happens with psychics as well. Mm-hmm. So that, you know, if you read your horoscope, right, you look for the meaning.
That power of suggestion.
How does this relate to me?
Yep.
Yeah. How does it relate to me? And so you can, and there's nothing wrong with that because it can be a very positive experience, right? Like it can help you maybe identify things about yourself, become a little bit more aware of knowing thyself.
Well, in my denial years, that was one of my tests, was I would go through my day and then sometimes read a horoscope, either intentionally or just by accident. Right. Like, hey, the horoscope just, you know, the newspaper landed in my lap or something. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of times it would still line up after the fact. Like, that's very specifically what I experienced. But I still dismissed it because it was like, well, again, am I just assigning my own meaning to it, you know?
Right, exactly. Am I looking for how it relates to me? And so I played a game quite a few times because I was heavily into horoscopes. 2007, I think. And I was like, because I was going through divorce and all kinds of stuff. It was just like, it was a hard time. So it was like, I'm looking for anything to help me through this and to tell me that things are going to be better. And horoscopes kind of offered that to me. Like, you're fine. You're going to be okay. I feel like a lot of astrology does that, or at least good astrology does that, you know. Mm-hmm. I think good anything that's, if it's tarot or psychic or astrology or any of these sort of wooey-hooey things, they can provide comfort or guidance towards where you're going, I guess. But I started to play this game where I realized I took a horoscope and I blocked out what sign it was for. And I read it as if it was my own, and to see if I was able to relate to it, not knowing, it was just random. I didn't know if it was mine or it wasn't mine. And I played that game to just see, like, does it resonate with me? Is it for me? And, you know, it depends on, you know, what astrologist or who's interpreting, blah, blah, blah. And they all related. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I could, I don't know if I can believe in this sort of thing. Then.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And sometimes we want to believe, and that sometimes is good and healthy. And so that's why I feel like, you have to be discerning in anything that you're going to follow or have a guide towards. Is it benefiting you? That's the question you should always ask yourself. Is it helping or is it hurting? And there are lots of psychics that play on your negative emotions. Mm-hmm. And you could take a tarot card, you could take an astrology reading, and you can turn it into good or bad, right? Like in any situation. And you can cause fear in someone, which who knows, does that then all of a sudden law of attraction attract in the bad thing to happen?
Right.
And we talked about that, like the influence of psychics can be pretty damaging. If you're leaning on somebody else's intuition or interpretation and then influencing your emotions, your behavior, and your attraction.
Yeah, and this is really interesting. Not just attractions, not in the movie, but we rewatched the Matrix trilogy, with the Oracle in it. And it's just interesting because I think when those came out, I was just sort of personally awakening to all of these things, but I still didn't quite understand a lot of it. But now that's almost 20 years old for the last two movies. Now I understand them more with like probability in regards to the Oracle being like a prophet, but she's within the Matrix herself, and so she's a program. Mm-hmm. So that's just really interesting how she influenced everyone based on what she would say to them,
Yeah.
So I don't know how to tie that in, but simulation and probability, all seem, and what we call psychics, all kind of interconnect in their own weird way. They're all related to like different paths of life, basically,
So.
Well, choices, like how important is choice? Like, do we actually, that's the whole free will question too, but
right.
But is there free will within a game, or is there only certain choices, or is there never a choice at all based on probability?
It's always an illusion of choice.
Right.
Or destiny,
right.
Do we believe in destiny or do you believe in free will?
Right.
Or is there some variation in between?
Right.
Which I tend to think there is. So my thought is on destiny is like if you were to look at your life or this reality as a movie, right? And when you die, let's say you step back and some people say, like Sylvia Browne and some other people, that it's like NDEs even say near-death experiences is what NDE is, for people who don't know. They say that they get a life review. So what if that's just like, your life being put on like a DVD, right? So it's already happened. When you're in the future, it's already happened. But if you're in the present time, obviously it hasn't happened yet, but it is going to happen because all time exists all time. All right, I'm getting a little bit out of topic here, but I know that so if you were to look at your life as a full DVD, from the future, yes, it is predetermined. But from your present, because you're in the movie, you're in real time making choices. And I think that's where kind of the Oracle talks about, like, you've already made your choice. You're just here to understand why.
Yes.
Why you made the choice.
Yeah, and I love that. And it's funny because coincidentally, I was understanding the movie in the future more too, like than I understood at that present when I watched the movie originally. It was funny. Now I'm understanding the choice I made to watch the movie.
Yeah. But I think that can be a detrimental piece to humanity and to man. People who think a lot can suffer from this inability. They get stagnation, or they get locked in their own need or desire to know why and to understand. Now, curiosity is a beautiful trait that we have. It allows for growth and expansion and creation and fun and play, actually. But when it gets too out of hand, it can become a search and a means for resistance, full resistance, and then blocks you from enjoying life because of the search, the Moby Dick, the need to find the whale, the great white whale, or the meaning of life, the meaning of anything.
Yeah.
The choices of why did I do what I did, or worse yet, why did somebody else do what they did, or why did they do what they did to me, can really cause suffering here on Earth or in this reality right now. So I think there is a combination of free will and determinism, but that is based on when you are looking, where you're looking, but when you're looking. If you're looking in the now, it is a choice. Mm-hmm. If you're looking in the future, it was already done.
Right.
And in the past, it's a probability or a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So it all comes down to perspective.
Perspective, again. Exactly.
Yeah, everything is perspective.
Right. And that's ultimately, I think, what is such a strong question to ask is not if we're in a simulation, because that's neither here nor there, because that would be, we're in a game. How do we play the game of life would be the question along with that. But the question is, what is objective truth? Is there any at all? And that comes back to kind of biocentrism, which is basically, does anything exist beyond what we're observing? Mm-hmm. And that has been my big question lately, has been, is the world really as fucked up as it is right now, where we're seeing these crazy things happening with children, the Epstein Islands, the government control, the vaccine, the digital ID passports, the elites trying to take over, is all of that stuff, is that real? And this is going to kill all of my conspiracy theory friends. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. Conspiracy theory friends is not a negative thing, because we definitely love to tap into those and consider all those. But I mean, if we're looking at it from a simulation standpoint, if this is a simulation, then what's in front of us? If you've ever played a game, that's why I think that playing games, at least a little bit, is really important to kind of understand how games work. Because it gives you another perspective on what could be happening in life. And I think the older population, the boomers and above, they haven't really played video games, so this concept can't seem to grasp the idea that maybe we're in a simulation, because they've never played a simulation to understand what a simulation would even be like. Right.
That is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's literally going to limit generational understanding of this very topic and maybe the nature of reality.
So I think the older generations don't really know how this is even a possibility, because it goes beyond their ability to understand their expansion of that. Right. But I was talking about biocentrism, and is there an objective truth? Is there an objective reality? Is there anything that goes beyond our perception that's real? And how would we ever know? Because we can't reach outside of our perception, because once we reach outside of our perception, we're in a new perception, Exactly. We can't prove that there's anything outside of what we're observing.
And this is the argument of consciousness too. How do we study ourselves studying ourselves?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, and that's kind of what consciousness even means in general, basically, is the ability to question your own existence.
Right. Yep. So shifting a little bit, I guess what I was thinking before you were talking, is anything real? And in particular to all this seemingly bad news, especially, everything you listed out lately that's been surfacing in the last few years, programs. This is something that you said, only certain generations might be able to understand a little bit better, but what are the purpose of different programs in a system? You have different programs within a game, right, that have certain functions. So what if that is a program in itself to, I don't know, what would it do? What would be the point of a program to introduce immense negativity on a world scale to human consciousness? What would be the point of that?
Disrupt the system.
Yeah.
And to create a growth and expansion. Think about when you're playing a game and you've achieved a level, right? You don't go back to Super Mario level 1 and you're like, oh, let me just do this all over again. It's like, duh, this is boring. Dun, 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 dun. I know exactly where the mushrooms are and everything. That's boring. So would you need a bigger challenge? You need another level. And so maybe society, humanity, or at least our perspective reality, our own reality has reached another level, and another level.
Yeah.
And so it's introducing these bigger concepts for us to contemplate on, and then work ourselves around and expand as a person, and expanding compassion. I feel like a lot of the lessons that I think we're learning is compassion, which is funny because if the rest of the world doesn't exist and it's just I don't know, are you real? Am I?
Right.
I think I'm real, but maybe I'm part of your simulation. You're part of mine. I don't know. Did you create me? Did I create you? Did we? Who knows? Who knows who is actually real and who is just an NPC, right? Is everybody an NPC? Or are we playing in I mean, it's more likely that we would all be playing in a multiplayer game, where we're actually collectively playing in our own little worlds, but also together.
Well, the other thing, I don't think
Co-creation.
it's co-creation. Yeah, I don't think it's sidetracking, but ever since, my synchronistic awakening, whatever you want to call it, like 20 plus years ago, like I noticed more, or at least thought that I was noticing more, that the world events would seem to be a macrocosm of my life, and my life would be a microcosm too. They would always relate in some way to the world events also, and where I was in my life. And I always wondered, did that make me the center of the universe again?
You sound like a Leo.
Right.
Which I am.
Yeah.
But you're Gemini.
But that introduced that question too, like, I guess I had it way before then. I was one of those kids like in grade school or whatever that was like, am I real? Am I the only one that's real and you're all fake kind of thing?
Right.
You don't, I mean,
right.
A lot of kids think that. I
no,
guess
they don't.
When you come, no?
Nope,
Okay.
just me and you.
All right, well.
There's very rare.
I remember
if you've
thinking
thought
that.
if you've thought that, anyone who's listening to this, if you've thought those things when you were younger, please comment below. We would like to be friends with you because there's not a lot of people who have thought those sort of things.
Yeah, I just assumed.
My friends always thought I was crazy. Like I said, in middle school, I think I turned around and we were in recess line ready to go in. I turned around and I was like, what if our dreams are a reality and our reality is our dreams? And my friend looked at me like you're weird. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but what if?
Yeah, that's so cool.
And like nobody, I had no one to talk to about these crazy thoughts that I've had when I was younger. So I'm so glad I met you. Took me 40 some years to find you, but yeah.
So do you think there's programs that maybe come and go in your life for certain purposes? You ever notice like you have different epochs in your life where certain time periods where something begins and then it ends, like there's a bookmark on it, whether it's a relationship or just how you feel for a while or a job or something, whatever, just different time periods that come and go where you seem to be learning similar things or you seem to be experiencing similar things. Or do you think those are programs too, or could be?
Or like S-Packs, like downloaded into our reality to teach us certain things. But who decides what we want? That's the thing. Like, who decides who's playing us? Like, are we just the avatar? Like Tom Campbell talks about, is like our bodies here, our perspective here on Earth is basically the avatar, and then we have a individual unit of consciousness, an IUC, that's above us, or what spiritual world would call higher self, what the religious community, Christianity would call maybe Holy Spirit. There's different terms for it. Inner being is what Abraham would call it in Law of Attraction. So, like, who's playing our game? Who's the game player, right? Like, is that ultimately our objective reality is above? I would think if there's an objective reality, we wouldn't be able to see it from our avatar's position. Maybe if we're taking psychedelics or, got some DMT going, like maybe we would be able to like see things a little bit more from outside of our perspective. But
well, I personally think you can see them in dreams sometimes, but like, I mean, I've had experiences where I've had dreams that seem to be prophetic of something that happens in the future, whether it's...
Oh, yes. We've had that.
That's almost a different... It's along the same lines. Like, I don't want to get into whole time.
But that's just a different that's still your perspective but from a different time perspective.
Yeah, I guess that's time itself.
Yeah, so but how could you see through somebody else's eyes unless you're like being John Malkovich? Oh, you never got to see that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the deep movies that I think that everyone should probably see. Or maybe, I don't know. I saw it a long time ago, but I just remember thinking, it's these people who are able to actually enter John Malkovich and look through his eyes and see the world through his eyes and in his way of thinking and stuff. So, we can't do that. And then still, we're still us. We're still our own consciousness. So we're still seeing it. If we are ourselves, we're still perceiving it through our own filters, through our own experience, right? Even if you were a soul entering into somebody else's body, which I'm not saying...
The body doesn't determine the experience necessarily. Right. I get what you're saying.
And even if you're able to, like, completely hear somebody else's thoughts and see things through their eyes and their perspective, you're still filtering it through your own experience, through your own knowledge. It's still coming from you. You can't go outside of yourself to perceive anything because then you're not yourself.
Mm-hmm. Boy, that's interesting.
You'd have to completely let go of who you are, or maybe be reborn, reincarnated. Maybe that's what reincarnation is you'd have to completely forget. You'd have to have no filters from any past lives or other lives or parallel lives. That's why maybe we can't access those sort of things, because perhaps that would cloud your ability to see things from another perspective.
Well, yeah, and that's been said not just in like Eastern religions, but I've heard that before too from various sources, that we get to experience everything. Mm-hmm. Which is another...
Right, that you've been a murderer and a rapist and all these horrible, heinous crimes you've actually committed.
I've been told that.
In some other life or some other form, or are committing simultaneously, because we're just all God split into billions of people,
right,
experiencing him itself, through all different experiences.
Follow us on that one.
Mind blown. I know. I don't know if you guys are still here. if you're still with us, comment below.
Comment below.
Just say I'm here. Yeah.
I don't know what to say on that.
Yeah.
It's interesting perspective.
So if we go back to like perspective and reality and objective truth, think about if you're playing a game, right? When you're starting to, especially like the older games, as you were like driving down the road, you could sometimes see trees start to digitally become, like actually be created. If you remember, do you remember that? Like the horizon, they would render. Yes, they would all of a sudden be rendering as you're going past them. Mm-hmm. So did they exist before you observed them? That's where I kind of like try to relate it to.
I keep thinking of the 13th Floor, which is such an underrated movie.
Oh, remind me of that movie. It's a B movie.
Yeah.
From the 80s,
No, it's 90s, from... It came 2000? Out the same year The Matrix did, I think.
The 13th Floor?
99, yeah.
Yeah, tell me about that. Tell us about that movie, Josh.
It was layers. It was layers of the simulation. So what the main character, what he was doing on one layer of the simulation was he was basically the bad guy, and he was corrupt. He was a corrupted file, basically. But the higher him was trying to figure out how he could beat the lower him or something like that. I don't remember the whole thing either.
Oh, now we got to watch it again.
But then when they would escape what they thought was their immediate surroundings, they would always, throughout the movie, they would say, don't go out to Arizona. Well, when they finally got out to Arizona, there was nothing. It wasn't rendered.
It was all like just the lines.
Yeah, it was so cool. It's such a good movie.
Like the holodeck.
Yeah.
In Star Trek, it's just those little lines. There's nothing actually there.
Right.
Is that really what we're in? Are we just in a holodeck? Are we in a metaverse?
Know? Again, how would you know?
Well, I feel like there's something innate within our souls that wants to create what we are and what we're experiencing, right? Mm-hmm. Art simulates... What is your saying? Art
creates reality, creates art.
Yeah, there you go. Something like that. So us creating like these games and this whole other simulation, which is what the metaverse is basically a simulated world.
Mm-hmm.
Like Second Life is, or even The Sims. Like those are all simulated worlds that are similar to us. So if we're doing that, then chances are that we've already done that, or a higher self of us has already done that, and that higher self is what's playing our game here on Earth. And we are the game. Right? It's just interesting to think that, and that's kind of like easier to understand, but then like we got lost in the game. Like, can you imagine if somebody, or just say like if somebody's born with the metaverse programming chip in their brain, they would not know the difference between reality and not reality,
right?
Because they would constantly be in the game. And if you're in the game, you don't know that you're in a game, so you would never look to get out of the game.
Well, this is what's freaky, is that I feel like we already are to a point. And I'm not saying that we're in the classical sense of a game, necessarily, but I feel like we're definitely doing that now. We're indoctrinating kids immediately into new ideas, whether you agree or disagree with them. We're already doing that. But what
do you mean into new ideas?
Well, new ideas about gender identity and weird, some, from my perspective, weird stuff that we shouldn't be doing. But they're already going to grow up with technology in their, not just in their hands, but it might not be too long before they have it in their heads too, if they don't already.
Yeah.
My point is that maybe, we're not necessarily safe either. We could have been born into certain ideas. I think we were born into certain ideas that we had to shed ourselves of, even being born in the 70s and 80s, meaning not necessarily technology on a physical aspect, but ideas. We're already born into ideas. Every generation is. You can't not be.
Like a collective consciousness ideas.
Yeah.
Like of what?
Well, like, for example, like we were still born into you go to college to get a good job thing. Like that didn't start fading off until after we were already here. That was an idea we were born into still, that we found out the hard way didn't stand up to the new rules of the game anymore. So
correct. Yeah, it was like leftover collective consciousness being passed. The rules of the game were being passed from our parents, but they were like, oh, we figured out how to play the game. You got to go to college. And then we're like, oh, okay, we got a leg up. We're going to go to college. Now I'm $70,000 in debt and I can't get a job that pays to pay off my $70,000 debt. Thanks, Mom. Thanks. Like that wasn't the right decision.
Yeah.
I'm not saying my mom, but in general, like that's kind of how it went down.
That's exactly it.
So then that generation ends up saying, okay, well now, like my parents were hard on me and they told me everything I was supposed to do, and I tried to follow it, and then I ended up screwed. So now I'm going to let my kids do whatever they want, and I'm going to let them just decide what gender they want to be, and decide at the age of 5 if they want to be a different gender. Well, we're going to accommodate that in whatever way possible.
Right.
So so we go to these extremes.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the only way that we can learn is to look back at what's been happening and evaluate how we keep swinging from one end to the other. But then there's this other aspect that I feel like is killing us, which is there seems to be some evil aspect, something creeping in that isn't just us swinging from one end of the pendulum to the other. It seems like it's something pushing us from one end of the pendulum to the other.
I've always been apprehensive in this life towards the overuse or abuse of technology. For some reason, I feel like a lot of us in our generation, because we have one foot in the pre-technological, technically I'm called an Xennial because I'm right at the cusp of X and millennial.
Right, I'm full X.
Yeah. So, but either way, we both experience the world without technology all around us. And then,
which is great.
Right. I miss that world. But I remember, always being apprehensive when computers started to come into our classrooms, which for me was in the 90s.
Yeah, you've always pushed against.
Right.
technology.
There's something I'm just not comfortable with it, but I didn't like how it was forced on me, and that's my personality in general.
Yeah.
It's like, let me come to it. Don't push something in my face
Right.
and tell me it's good for me and that I have to do it.
Right.
Let me make that decision. Well, with technology, we're constantly forced.
Yeah.
I feel like.
There's a technological consciousness that's part of the collective ideas that are pushing us in a direction.
Right. So like
you can't survive or play the game without being technologically savvy in some way.
Not anymore.
No.
That's the new rules. So I've found my own uses for things. Like I like the technology related to making music now is kind of fun, you know.
Yeah.
There's good and bad things that come along with that because now you have a bunch of people that call themselves musicians that, you know, just play on their computer. But, you know, that's a different topic, whether that's talent or not talent, you know, blah, blah, blah. But I've used it for those things. I enjoy those things. But I am not excited about the fact of being pushed to put on a thing on our faces to have this simulated, you know, metaverse, you know, from some creepy kid.
Yeah, I feel like that's going too far.
You know, it's too far.
To me, I feel like it's too far. But I've never really enjoyed like the Second Life stuff or the Roblox stuff. Yeah. I feel like, but the younger generations are absolutely
right, and that's the thing because they were already born with phones in their hand and all of the stuff that we didn't experience. That's all they know.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of time and decades before that's acceptable because that's the norm. Mm-hmm. So we just had to overcome more collective cultural programming where the current young generation, I don't know what we're at now, we're past Y, you know.
Alpha is the youngest, I think.
So like they're, you know, it's
our
interesting.
Grandkids' age.
Yeah, they're already born into this craziness and they're going to, you know, at some point, are they going to be like, this is just really messed up?
I think Alpha is probably going to end up seeing, is my hope and my vision, that they're going to see all of the mistakes of the Gen Y and they're going to want to rebel against that and they're going to go full Amish. They're going to be like, I'm going back to the deep woods and we're gonna live off the land.
It would be really interesting because to them that might be a new concept. Because if they were never taught that the Amish even exist and they grew up in this simulation with all these electronics all around them, feeding them bullshit all the time, they wouldn't know that Amish even exists. They wouldn't even know, especially if you change history like people are doing.
Yeah.
Just imagine if they're never taught.
We're talking about Alpha, but if you're talking about like maybe generations after Alpha.
Yeah, beyond that, yeah.
Yeah, we start back over.
Right. Like, what if? And it's a new idea to them.
They'll all be in the simulation, in the metaverse, right, creating Amish communities.
Right. What if we create this community that doesn't use technology?
Right. And we need a set of rules.
I mean, we see this pattern.
It's a play on the word Bible.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. We see this pattern in humanity, though, through where we tend to repeat the same things over and over.
Right, yeah. So I think about how all these things kind of relate together. And that's why I think Thomas Campbell, when he calls his simulation theory, basically big toe, meaning his big TOE, theory of everything, makes sense because it really does tie in everything. It gives an explanation, a blanket explanation for everything that goes on, for consciousness, for law of attraction and the algorithms. Because law of attraction, I feel like the experience of time, synchronicities, psychics, dreams, death. I mean, he talks about suicide and having to start the game over again, and also being able to access what were we calling it? A data query the data system
base,
yeah, the database where we can actually access all information through another frequency or realm by stepping out of the limitations of our physical bodies, which people can do through meditation and prayer and psychedelics and things, ayahuasca and things like that. So The problem is, like, when you use psychedelics and stuff, this is where and dreams, like, when you step out of your body, you're not in a control, right? That's the problem. Like, when you're here in your body, you feel like you're in control, right? I can move this pillow and it moves to where I want it to be. And in your dream, it becomes a fucking dragon, like you don't get to control.
Yeah.
Like, it's different set of rules. Here in this reality, we have a nice set of rules that allows for linear and like physics and the law of attraction, which I do believe is an algorithm in the game of life. And so we have all these set kind of programs that we use here in this reality. And then, see, that's the problem, is like realists then believe that, okay, well, this is all that there is in this reality. They are the ones the deepest in. They think that they're the most enlightened, but they are the most indoctrinated into the physical avatar reality because they don't have the ability, or they don't want to have the ability to see beyond that, because then there's no, they're control freaks. I mean, love you very much, but for the most part, you think about for a second, if you're a realist, how much you need to have control.
It is interesting, though, that you said when you're on psychedelics, for instance, that you're not in control, but you mentioned it beforehand that being in this reality or in your body, you're in control. You said that, right? So that's really interesting. Yeah. Like, what is it about this reality that gives people this false sense of control?
Yeah.
What is control?
Well, why do we want it?
And why do we want it? Because we feel like we don't have it, right?
Right. Well, probably. Most people don't. I mean, that's what causes a lot of addictions and things like that in our world, is this desire to try to have control over something. Right? Yeah. Like we are always trying to gain control over something.
So is it this program, let's say, call it a program of this, when I say our base reality, waking up, going to work, whatever, the repeated routines that we do, and while we're awake, or at least we think we're awake, what is it about this reality that makes people think they're in control more than in their dreams, aside from causality? Exclude causality. What is it about this reality that makes people think or want control? Just a question.
Well, control is power. So I'm thinking I equate something to that, whether it's sovereignty, like power and control in your own thoughts, your own mindset, your own ability to do things, or control over other people or the things, other objects. It's power. You have power over yourself, you have power over other people. And I feel like that's one of the innate things that we're dealing with or recognizing in the world is this humanity. Is what evil really is this incredible drive for power. And it's not money, because money is just a means to power in this reality. Correct. Or in this financial system that we have set up right now. And so does fame, popularity creates power in the tribe. So the strive for power and control is part of what I think is what our innate sin is in the flesh, in this reality, because we're always trying for it.
I'm digging deeper. What is it about control and power that's so satisfying, though? Is it having unlimited choices? Does it come down to choices again? When you don't have power...
Well, unlimited choices would mean that it's actually that power is actually a drive for... If that's what it was, it would mean that it's a drive for freedom.
Right.
Because unlimited choices is freedom.
So these people, in theory, that want so much, they're power hungry and drunk, like, want more freedom at the expense of controlling and limiting other people's freedoms.
But I don't think that's what it is.
No.
I think there's something else about that. I think power is wanting to limit other people's freedoms.
That's what I said.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I'm saying, but that doesn't mean that they have a craving for freedom, because they already have it. Maybe it's like the next level. Like, if you have more money than anybody in the whole world, which, we've seen an incredible shift in wealth and power simultaneously, just from COVID alone. In the last couple of years, we have more billionaires, or, we went from 2 billionaires to 20 billionaires or something like that. I mean, I know it's more.
And the top 5 doubled their money as well.
The wealth gap
Yeah,
became
exactly.
extremely
largest
wide.
it's ever been in recent
As ever
history.
been, yep. Yeah. The transfer of wealth and power has never been as strong as it is from the last couple years of what's been going on.
The freedom, like you don't think they necessarily...
so they have this ability they already have freedom through money. They can do whatever they want. They can go wherever they want. They can do whatever they want. They can buy an island and just live there and be happy. But it's something more. It's like, okay, now I want something more. Now I want more. I want your happiness. I want your freedom. I want control over you. And that just seems like it's just evil.
Yeah.
Because like when you have full freedom, like is that the split that we have? Is that we have good just wants to have freedom and bad wants to have your freedom?
There's something to that.
I have all the money.
Sure.
I have everything else I want in the world. Now, what's the only other thing that you can buy a wealthy person is to buy them, to buy them other people.
Right.
To buy them other people's wealth, and other people's freedom.
Yeah.
To have slaves. I mean, we've been slaves, but it's being more concentrated now. We are all slaves.
Right.
To this world right now.
Right.
And to the elites, to the people.
Absolutely.
And I don't mean Whoopi Goldberg. She ain't a freaking elite. She's a Hollywood puppet. Like, she's just somebody...
As we've seen, they'll cast her out the first chance they get.
Exactly. Well, she was talking the other day saying that she was one of the elites. No, honey. You're not the elite. That's not who we were talking about when we were talking about elites.
That's why they just cast you out a few months ago when they didn't like what you said, you know.
We're talking about the globalist trillionaires, the people who have more money than you could even ever spend in a lifetime. Those people. That's who we're talking about. The ones that are trying to dominate and control us. You're just a puppet for them. So, I don't know how to deal with that. But we didn't even get to the topic that I wanted to talk about today, which was, like the one thing that I'm really questioning, like, is if any of that is even real anyways.
We kind of covered that. If it could be a program of negativity. Yeah. What do you want to say about it?
Well, I felt like, that's like, I'm like, we're seeing these so strong extremes, right? For me, I'm just thinking, is it real? Have I personally met and seen any of those things happen? Have I seen a litter box in the school? Have I seen parents, with my own two eyes, met a person and knew that she was like saying, well, my 5-year-old identifies as a cat, so she sleeps in a little cat box in her cat bed on the floor. Is that something that I'm actually seeing with my own eyes? Therefore, is it real? Is evil real? Because I haven't, not evil, but I'm saying this corrupt darkness that we're seeing through our electronics, right? So I'm seeing it from other people saying that it's out there. I'm hearing it on the telephone, basically, right? It's someone heard that someone else did, that someone else saw, that someone else retweeted, right? Are those things actually real, or could they be programs that have been installed in our reality program that's kind of like, oh, look there's this looming stuff all around you. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. Is there anything beyond what we're actually experiencing and perceiving firsthand?
Right. That's what we talked about last night. That's why this was, how would you judge what is real to you? Is it things you see? Like, do things that you see just with your own eyes and not on a screen weigh heavier on what you would consider reality? Like, or do you consider everything on all of your screens just as equal and important as what you see with your eyeballs? Right.
Yeah.
Hear, the difference between sight and sound, things you hear verbally.
I think a bit more of like, not just what I'm seeing, but like, or hearing, but also like, well, what is in your what's in your vibration? What's in your reality, in your perception?
Yeah. What do you feel?
Or experiencing.
Or experience, yeah.
So my question is, then if, like, what came first, chicken or the egg? And also, if a tree lands in the forest, does it make a sound if no one's there to hear it? That's really what biocentrism is really about. Was that tree existing before it rendered in front of you? How can you prove that there's anything beyond what you are experiencing? What is objective truth? What is objective reality? You can't prove it. I can't prove that you're real when you leave my eyesight. So then I'm thinking, if we talk about the program of law of attraction, if we are in a simulation, a law of attraction is a program, but then also there is an SPAC that has been downloaded into our realities recently of this evil elite globalist economic forum trying to take over the people and power. If law of attraction is also something that's real in our simulation, then that basically means that whatever you're giving your attention to, whatever you're putting your focus on, is what is being created or becoming more real or being more of, right? Whatever you are focusing on is what becomes more of your reality or more into your reality. You're attracting it into your reality. And in simulation, like that law of attraction goes hand in hand with that. Like it makes so much sense that then is there something that's been injecting into our reality and ideas of evil that are more like heinous, like this child trafficking sort of thing? Like what in the world, how is this even possible? How is Jeffrey Epstein's Island an actual thing that's happened in the world? Like, no, like that's horrifying. But then could it be like, oh, us paying attention to it is creating more of it? Do you get what I'm saying? This is where I think that a lot of people get into trouble, because you have these light workers, spiritual beings that are on one end of the spectrum that are like, don't pay attention to it because you don't want to give it more attraction to be coming into our reality more and more, which seems like it actually is happening.
Yeah.
So if you were evil, you would start as a whisper. Satan would start as a whisper. And then you would be like, what is that noise? And then the more you would focus on it, law of attraction would make his sound louder. And then it would create form, and then it would manifest into our reality or into our simulation. And so have we collectively manifested Satan and evil into our world by focusing on or resisting it. And I'm not saying you want to give into it by any means, but like pushing against and adding anger and fear and frustration towards it would actually draw it into us a little bit more. And that would mean that we are actually creating this horrible world. And now that sounds awful. Absolutely. Like, oh my gosh, am I the one, because I've focused on it, because I've heard it as a thought and then thought about it and then feared it, have I created it to become real or more real, or even have expanded evil in the world by focusing on evil more? And if that's the case, then how do we, that's a horrible thing. But also, then does that mean, come back to the word of control, does that mean we can actually control that reality also by moving away from that? And so in the law of attraction, you don't just say, I don't want that, get away from me, because it doesn't hear no. The algorithms don't hear no. It doesn't hear that. It just, the more you're giving your energy towards pushing against it is what's actually giving it power. So you would actually want to release power and release your resistance by what I think a lot of people are doing, which is making fun of it. Like making light of it actually starts to release the resistance. You're not fearing it so much. The monster is not as big. Your fears are not as big when you're facing them. There's not a monster on the bed when you look underneath it. You're actually facing those fears, which are releasing your energy towards it and releasing it from the stronghold that it has on our world and on our reality or in our simulation. And when you release that fear through either joking about it, minimizing it, laughing at it, is a really good way to be like, oh, fuck you. You're not that important. Like, you're not really that big. I'm not afraid of you. And not like, I'm not afraid of you, I'm going to fight you, but I'm not afraid of you because you're insignificant, right? You're actually not as big as, the devil is only as big as we perceive him to be. And Satan is only as big and relevant and prevalent in our world as we perceive him to be. And so when we dismiss him, we laugh at him, and then we turn away from him, he becomes small. The monster becomes tiny. It becomes not as big. You'd pull the curtain back and you see that the Wizard of Oz is just this little dinky dorky man just pulling a bunch of levers. That's Satan. Like you're nothing. You're nobody. You've been pulling levers. You've been manipulating us. You've been telling us we're this and that and trying to control us. But now we see you for who you are, and you're ridiculous. And now you don't want to hate that, because hating him, like that's why I think the Wizard of Oz is such and I don't know if it was meant to be this way, but I think it's such an incredible movie or story to be able to see that it's you're facing fear, courage, brain, like all those sort of things. It's just such a great analogy for life and for a simulation. And then when you see the Wizard of Oz and then you reveal it, and then what does she do? I mean, she's mad at first, right? Dorothy's like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe you're doing this. But then at the same time, she's also like feeling compassionate for him. Like there's still this kind of like, okay, well, you're just some dorky little guy, She's not going to stab him and tear him down and rip him away and take over his control. She's just like, okay, now I'm not afraid of you anymore. Now let me focus on what I want. What do I really want? What am I trying to do? And then obviously the Good Witch says, you've had it in you all along, so you have the ability. There's so much good stuff that comes out of that. So you have compassion, sympathy for the devil in a way that's like, okay, you're just small. You have sympathy for somebody who you feel like they don't have control, when you feel like they don't have control over you, right? Like you're nothing. I'm sorry that you're the way you are, but you're insignificant to me. And then you turn away from that, and you turn away from it by focusing on something else, right? Like as long as you continue to give your attention to the devil, you're giving it power. So if you you can be aware, not be afraid, not resist, and not be angry, not hate, because that gives him more power, but turn away and then focus on God, focus on what's good, focus on laying in the grass and focus on flowers and, gardening and the sun and the sky and the birds and the love of and the warmth of your partner and the fluffiness of your dog, and you focus on what's good in the world, and then all of a sudden that starts to create. So you're simultaneously reducing the evil, not putting your head in the sand and pretending it isn't there, but you're simultaneously reducing the evil and at the same time increasing good. And when you do both, that's how we get our world back. That's how we get our world back. That's how we create our 5D reality, our new earth, our heaven on earth, whatever. And if we can do that collectively and we can all do it together, like we can maybe, overcome this level and move to the next level of the game, which is a lot more peace, love, harmony, minimal contrast. Contrast is good, but we don't, we would like it more minimally, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You pretty much just said everything that I wrote down.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. Like
okay.
How we are the center of the universe. Like there's been a lot of studies, like not just on perception, but like on the quantum level. Like you really can't prove or disprove that you're not anyway.
Correct. Right.
And so your focus is literally everything. And then I wrote, how do we balance outside stimuli or what seems to be that with our reality without being what we would say ignorant or blind or unaware, but also, that certain level of not ignorance, but focus releases resistance also. You've just covered everything.
Yeah.
And
right.
Bringing in the Wizard of Oz was perfect because that's actually a theological book. A few years ago, I found an article that broke it down, and I never realized all the symbolism.
Oh, it's such a good book.
Yeah.
It's such a good story.
Her slippers were originally silver in the book. They changed them to red for the movies, because it was the first Technicolor movie.
Yeah, right. Color.
But silver was supposed to represent in Eastern religion the silver tie to heaven or your home, basically, which is why she tapped her heels to go home.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I don't know. You killed it. That's everything.
Yeah.
We got to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's how we save the world. It's how you play the game and save the world. Who's doing it with me? Who's coming with us?
Yep.
We're going to New Earth. Let's go. We're creating a new Earth.
The game has changed. New rules. New Earth.
Rules set by us in a world where
where the rules have changed.
Anything else you want to add to that?
Nope, you got it. That was your end rant.
Till next
Next
time,
time.
everybody.
Stay high.
Congratulations, you've made it all the way to the end of this long-ass podcast. And we want to thank you for joining us. And we want to hear from you. What answers do you have to these questions? What comments do you have? What insight do you have? Share with us. And what questions do you have for the answers? Find us on all podcast apps and on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe. And of course, you can find us on our website. Thanks so much for listening and stay high, everyone.